Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner and today we're going to be talking about the Esports World Cup 2024 playoffs for Rainbow Six Siege. So really quick, let's recap who made it through the groups. From Group A, in the upper bracket, we had BDS and Team Liquid. They made it through without any losses, meaning they didn't have to play any best of threes in groups. In the lower bracket, we had Space Station and W7M advancing, and then from Group B, we had Furia and Bleed making it through undefeated, and with one loss, we had FaZe Clan and Dark Zero also making it through. And keep in mind, the way that the seeding for the bracket works is it is the upper bracket teams from one group versus the lower bracket teams from the other group. So Furia had a 50-50 chance of playing either Space Station or W7M, and then Bleed would play the other one of the two, and then similarly, BDS would play against either FaZe or Dark Zero, and Liquid would play against the other one. And the way things pan out, the bracket looks like this. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Here we go. And yeah, the way it works out is that we don't see any Brazil versus Brazil matchups in the quarterfinals, and we also, I guess, don't see NA versus NA, and then we only have one representative from Europe and one from APAC, so we couldn't have seen an all APAC or all Europe matchup anyways. And we do actually end up only seeing one Brazil versus Brazil matchup because our saviors BDS didn't allow us to see anymore. So let's talk about the matches in particular, starting with Liquid versus Dark Zero. This one goes all three maps, and I guess only one of the quarterfinals doesn't go all three maps. And 15 rounder on Consulate. It's a heartbreaker for Dark Zero because if they'd won in round 15 and then things remained the same on Cafe, then they would have won the series 2-0. But instead they lose round 15, win on Cafe, and then they go on to Clubhouse, and it's pretty close to start with. It goes to a 3-3 half, but then when Liquid goes on the defense, Dark Zero doesn't get another round. It was probably some combination of Liquid defending pretty well and Dark Zero just attacking kind of poorly, which is a little bit sad. Clubhouse is a super fundamental map. It has literally always been in the map pool. It's had changes here and there. Maybe some meta changes have influenced it, but it's stayed largely the same for a very, very long time. So to see a top team like this not even put together a single attack is sort of tough, was sort of tough to watch, and Liquid was the better team on the day. I said that I thought it was basically a coin flip between all of these matchups except for Furious Space Station, and funnily enough, that was actually the one that ended up being the closest. Liquid won a total of 19 rounds, Dark Zero won 17, but when we get to Furia versus Space Station, you'll see it's even closer than that. But next up, we have Bleed versus W7M, and this one was an absolute slaughter. Bleed took these guys down at SI. The team didn't look very good back then, or just at that event, I suppose. And they were actually lows at the time. They weren't W7M, and they had a couple different players. Now they have Dodez and Volp, so sort of a different team, sort of the same team. They have at least the core, but I guess things worked out for them in the matchup one way or another because they absolutely massacred Bleed. Not a whole lot to talk about. Bleed, I mean, good for them. They impressively made it to the top 8. Of course, they only had to play best of ones, but one of the teams that they did have to play against was FaZe. No slouches in their own right, but we'll see what happens to them in a moment. And let's actually just move on to it. Yeah, BDS versus FaZe, really close Nighthaven labs, and this is actually the only map BDS drops the entire event, so kudos to FaZe for that. But once we go on to Bank and Skyscraper, absolute destruction, 7-0 and 7-2. FaZe only gets 2 rounds between 2 maps. And actually, after they go up 5-1 on Nighthaven Labs, they get a pretty hefty lead early on the defense of Nighthaven Labs. We have seen them choke that before. They choked, I think it was a 6-1 lead against W7M in the SI Grand Finals this year. So they could have choked it, but not quite. BDS almost makes the comeback. But anyways, as I was saying, after FaZe goes up 5-1 on Nighthaven Labs, they only win 4 of the next 22 rounds. BDS wins 4 on Nighthaven, 7 on Bank, 7 on Skyscraper, and FaZe gets 2 more on Nighthaven and 2 on Skyscraper. So brutal beatdown after the first map, and I guess just after the first half of the first map, really. And yeah, BDS, that's their first map loss of the event, but you know, spoilers, they don't take another map loss. They certainly don't take a series loss, and they never even drop 5 rounds in another map. This is the only map, you know, they dropped 7 rounds here, but in all of the maps that they won, which was 9 of the 10 maps that they played, I believe, they didn't drop any more than 4 rounds. So getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I mean, you probably already know what happened, and you could see at least the map score here. the series score. We'll get to that matchup when we get to it. Furia versus Space Station, the final quarterfinal. And yeah, I thought Dark Zero maybe was the slight favorite in this one. It went the other way. I thought Bleed was maybe the slight favorite in this one. It went the other way. I thought BDS was not the heavy favorite, but certainly the favorite in this one. Although it could have gone to FaZe, but no, it does go to BDS. And so I guess I didn't make like official predictions, but I guess if you count what I said as sort of my prediction, then I went 2-2 with Furia winning this one, but just barely, absolutely barely. 7-4 win for Furia on Border, and then 7-4 win for Space Station on Oregon. They're dead even, one map apiece. They both won it 7-4, and then they go on to Chalet, and it goes to all 15 rounds. This could have been a banger if we'd had infinite overtime, you know, at least in the final map. But that's pretty rare in general these days, especially in a non-grand final. So yeah, we don't see that. And Furia, once they go to overtime, they must have like a really good record. I guess they have a really good record overall of just winning, but they're really good when their backs are against the wall, as in the aforementioned game versus FaZe in the grand finals. We also see that here because if I remember correctly, SSG were up, I think 6-4, 6-5, and then Furia is the one that has to push overtime, and then they win in overtime in the very final round. So yeah, only one single round separating these two teams, and Furia, they went out top 8 in Manchester, so they improved their performance from there. And Space Station, I guess they did a lot better because they went 0-3 in Swiss and Manchester, whereas they made top 8 here, and again, we're one round again away from the semi. So good showing by them. This was a fun one to watch, but tough to watch them go out like this. And same thing with both NA teams. Dark Zero, had they won in round 15 on the first map, they would have advanced. Had Space Station won in round 15 on the third map, they would have advanced. So heartbreaker for NA. They're all out, and I guess APAC's out as well, leaving 3 Brazilian teams, 1 European team. Liquid versus W7M is next up, and W7M takes them down fairly easily. Only 2 maps required. It is max regulation for both of them, but no overtime needed. So yeah, Liquid failed to make another grand finals. They've made a few, but even when they make the grand finals, they lose, and probably they would have lost this one. It feels hard to imagine anybody beating the BDS that showed up at this event, and I guess BDS anytime they're in Saudi Arabia, right? And yeah, as for the other semifinals, BDS beat Furia. It's actually less close than Liquid versus W7M. And I mean, I guess to be expected again, with all the things we've said about BDS, maybe you thought it would have been closer given the stature of Furia. And I feel like maybe there's going to be a little bit of a rivalry evolving for these teams as far as legacy goes. Like if Furia keep not winning and BDS keep winning events, then at some point BDS has to, you know, become a better historical team than Furia. They have several event wins that they need to get before that happens, but again, current trajectories, it's entirely possible that will happen. And yeah, not too much to say about it. Pretty clean wins for BDS on both maps. And then in the grand final, absolute beatdown, Slaughterhouse. BDS 3-0 W7M, 7-2 on Clubhouse, 7-3 on Consulate, 7-1 on Oregon. No Border, no Skyscraper required. A lot of people were saying that they would have much rather seen like Liquid or Dark Zero in the grand final, that they would have put up a better fight against BDS. I expect that's probably true, but I mean, you probably shouldn't have lost to W7M if you wanted to try to beat BDS, and I guess Dark Zero lost to Liquid. And yeah, not too much else to say about it, except for that I believe this is the most dominant grand final of all time in any event. Maybe there was, I think wasn't the Xbox SI final like a double 7-0 or something insane? I feel like there was something way long ago, but you know, if you go back that far, it's pretty Mickey Mouse. G2 beat Evil Geniuses 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, so they went, you know, plus 12 on round differential, but they only played to 6 back then, whereas now they play to 7. So the loser in both of those matches, Evil Geniuses then W7M now, only won 6 rounds, but BDS won 3 more rounds here because again, you have to play to 7. So they went plus 15 on the round differential. And actually, if you look at the round differential against W7M for the whole tournament, they went plus 20 because they also beat them 7-2 in groups up here. So pretty hefty record on the current W7M roster from BDS. And yeah, I think the only other thing I want to talk about, and I talked about it earlier, is the fact that if BDS keep winning, which looks entirely possible, I think at this point they look like by a pretty decent margin the best team in the world. Coming into Manchester and probably even coming into this event, I think a lot of people consider like FaZe and Furia to be pretty close, but it feels like the gap is widening. We saw them beat FaZe, again, destruction in 2 of the 3 maps. We saw them beat Furia pretty easily on only requiring 2 maps. We saw another Brazilian team also fall. Destruction at the hands of BDS. Will they be considered? They're probably like number 5 or something of all, like 4, 5, 6, right around their teams of all time at this point with everything that they've won. Keep in mind that Shaiko and Bride on this roster have now won. They won Gamers 8 2022, 2023, and this event, EWC 2024. The team without Uses and Solotop, they won the Jönköping Major. This entire team was just the runners-up in Manchester, and now they won this event. And they also have some, at least one or 2 like minor events throughout the years. Again, while the roster has changed, but still, some of the same players and certainly the same org. And so I do wonder, maybe they win the next major and then they win SI. Where does that put them versus W7M/Furia? Not the current W7M roster, but the current Furia team. Where does that put them? I think it depends probably how well Furia do. If they do really, really poorly, maybe that leapfrogs them. Probably BDS will need even one more event than that because Furia's resume, incredible. Not only do they have the 2 major wins and the 1 SI win, they also have they have an SI Grand Finals appearance where they didn't win. They have other major top 4, stuff like that. Anyways, I'm sort of rambling on about this. I do want to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, what does BDS need to do to become a better team all time compared to Furia? And then maybe even like Penta G2. I think that debate still rages whether W7M/Furia is the best team of all time or if Penta/G2 is the greatest team of all time. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on the event. I feel like we didn't see too many super exciting matchups. Oh, one more thing I did want to say really quickly. FaZe Clan, they've lost to the event winner a bunch of times. Certainly the last 3 events. They lost to W7M, who won SI. They lost to Beast Coast in the quarterfinals of Manchester. Beast Coast ended up winning. They lost to BDS here in the quarters, who ended up winning. And I feel like, and I haven't double checked this, that maybe that's even the case going back to some events before that. You can fact check that if you like, but FaZe Clan, even though they are going out a little bit early, do keep in mind they are losing to the eventual tournament winner. And in this event, although they got stomped in 2 of the maps, they were the only team to take the 1 map off of them. So I think that's also a legacy concern. I feel like FaZe is also around top 5 teams of all time, like FaZe from the last few years. But anyways, okay, yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a sub. That stuff is great, and I will catch you guys next time.